Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Bonnie Bell's presentation on the Bluebird Trail. We do ask that you please keep your video off and keep yourselves muted. And during the presentation, if you have any questions, just type them into the chat box. And at the end of the presentation, Bonnie will answer your questions. We do have a few videos in today's presentation, and I know Zoom can be a little glitchy at times, but I do have someone monitoring that who will let me know if there's a problem, and I'll try to fix that as soon as possible. I also just want to warn you that my dogs are in the room with us and may make noise, so I apologize for that ahead of time. Let's see, so Bonnie today is going to be again presenting on the Bluebird Trail. Bonnie's been a trail monitor since 1998 in Montgomery County. She started with her own nest box in her yard in '92, so she's been doing this for a very long time. She's been interested in the natural world since childhood. One of her earliest memories is of her mother lifting her up to see the birds at the feeder outside the kitchen window. From there, education in animal science and veterinary medicine was almost inevitable. She has been monitoring her own and county park boxes for over 20 years. After resisting joining the board of the Maryland Bluebird Society for several years, she now serves as secretary, or she served as secretary and now as treasurer of the society. She's also a volunteer ranger at Seneca Creek State Park, where her greatest joy is showing visitors, both children and grown-ups, something new in the natural world. And with that, I will hand things off to you, Bonnie.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming. I hope you are going to enjoy this, and we will go right ahead and get started. And I must preface this by saying this whole presentation was pretty much put together by our hostess Lisa, so she gets a lot of kudos for this presentation. I'm narrating and I was in the videos, but Lisa really did a lot of work on this. So let's go to the next slide.
All right. Here, there we go.
So trail monitoring, and you don't have to have a trail to call it trail monitoring. If you just have one box in your yard, and most suburban backyards make very nice bluebird habitat, that box needs to be monitored. You can have a trail of one, and you need to record your data. You need to know what's happening in population trends, particularly if you're willing to share that with citizen science projects. You can discover any problems happening in the box. You do need to clean out that box, and if you clean it out several times during the season, you may get several different groups of baby birds coming out, and they may not just be bluebirds. You can have a lot of other native birds nesting in your box, and it's a lot of fun. Bluebird monitoring is really a lot of fun. Next slide. So box design, box design and placement. We will talk about this box, and if you were in Dana's presentation yesterday, you should know all about getting a good bluebird box. So go ahead and play that video.
So there are some very important things when you're going to consider putting up a bluebird box. One is the design of the box and the size of the entrance hole, the size of the box, the roof with an overhang to keep the rain from going directly inside. The box, the whole entrance hole should be 1.5 to 1 9/16 inches in diameter, no bigger, because that would allow in competition birds. The box is roughly 4 inches. It should have some ventilation at the top, and actually underneath here, there are some openings to get ventilation through. You want to mount your box preferably on a metal pole, because if you put this box on a tree, every squirrel, raccoon, and neighborhood cat is going to try and get into that box. So a metal pole is definitely recommended. You want to place it facing some open area, preferably with maybe 20, 30 feet away, some kind of a perch. Here we have a tree nearby so the parents can call for their young when they're going to fledge. Not deep in the woods, because the bluebirds don't like to be in the woods, and the house wrens do. And then this is called a predator guard. One of your responsibilities is to make sure that predators are not getting into the box, and that could include, as I mentioned earlier, squirrels and raccoon. Also snakes will climb up just stovepipe. You can buy it at Home Depot or Lowe's. And it's mounted with some hardware cloth here, so a raccoon can't get up here. They'll try and climb and then they can't get here. Squirrels can't go. Snakes, if they try and come up the pole, they get stopped by the hardware cloth here. So this is a very effective way to prevent predators from getting into the box. You want to start with this. You don't want to find out by having your babies all disappear down a snake or a raccoon. Better to have a predator in advance. If you're placing this in your yard, it's good for this to be loose like this. That can make a lot of noise. I recommend don't put it under your bedroom window because on a windy night, you don't want to hear that all night long. So there are some very important things.
Oops,
There we go. Sorry.
that's okay.
So there are some
So that was a good overview of setting up a box. And you'd be surprised, even if you've never seen a snake or a raccoon in your yard, they are there. Squirrels are certainly there. So installing it with a predator guard right from the get-go is really a very good idea. There are other designs of predator guard, which I'll go over tomorrow when I'm talking about homeland security. But it is essential that you put up a correct box, that somebody can't get in there that wants to eat those eggs or babies. And so on the left of this photo, you can see a typical monitoring sheet, which just has the date and then a column for the type of nest you're seeing, the number of eggs, the number of young, and the number that survived and actually fledged, in other words, left the box. And then there's a big column for comments because you're always going to see something new. You might need to put a comment about what you need to do next time because maybe this box needs some kind of repair. And on that box is, standing on top of the box is the male with a little bit of food, and the female is right at the nest. And we'll see later, these adults are encouraging their young to fledge, something we don't see very often, but that's always fun to see. And you really see the difference in color. That male is a beautiful blue. He's not in the sunshine here, but he's a gorgeous color. The female, like most female birds, is more muted because she has to protect those babies that can't run away. So she does not want to attract predators by being a bright and flashy bird. Next slide. So this is something that you want to have, even if you've just got one box. It's very convenient to have things like this to correctly monitor your box. The little mirror has battery powered lights on it, and it's on a telescoping pole. So that collapses right down. I actually, if anyone's on the other view, I have one here that you can see. I'll show you maybe at the end, because you can extend this. And then if the nest box is a little high for you, you can look down into the nest cup and see what's going on in there. The putty knife is very useful for lifting the used box out of the nest. Then there's a little brush that's actually a small wire brush that I use for just scrubbing down the sides and the bottom and cleaning everything out. The disposable glove is because not all bluebirds have pretty clean nests, but some birds have pretty dirty nests. You might want to wear some disposable gloves to handle that material, particularly if you're pregnant, if you've got immunocompromised health issues. I recommend using the gloves for that. Next slide. And then there were other things. If you're in your yard, it really doesn't matter, because if you need something, you can just go back in the house. But if you're going out and checking boxes on a bluebird trail, you probably want to have a few other supplies with you. I like to travel light, so I carry a small notebook and I note everything there, and then I copy it over to my nesting sheets when I get back. A screwdriver, a pair of pliers, some of the miscellaneous hardware that's used in the box in case something has come loose. Some sanitary wipes. A trash bag is always useful because you never know what you're going to find. A little light in case your mirror is not working, and the electrician's tape. You never know what you're going to find. Your predator baffle has come loose, and you can tape it back on while you get a better repair going. Next slide. So you need to clean the box. In other words, you wait until that nest box, you've cleaned them in the winter, so they're ready to go. A bird, whether it's a bluebird or a chickadee or a titmouse, has used the box, and then the babies have fledged. So now you have an empty nest. It's got some bird poop in it. And the best thing to do is to absolutely clean that out. So that little putty knife, which you can get at the dollar store, not very expensive, is helpful. I was wearing gloves, pull that right out. And then there are some recommendations that you bag that in a trash bag and throw it away. Personally, that's really good mulch, and there's no reason not to throw it somewhere, but you want to dispose of that away from the box. You want that, carry it at some distance from the box, toss it into the woods or in your yard if you have a mulch pile, but don't leave it just below the box, because a lot of predators are pretty smart. Foxes, raccoons in particular, they'll come along and sniff that used nest on the ground and say, I smell baby birds, where could they have been? And that will just attract them to your box, which you don't want. So you just scrape out what's left, use the brush to scrub down the walls and the floor and everything, and then it's ready to go. You don't necessarily need to disinfect this in between broods, unless, of course, you've seen any kind of problems. If there have been mites, or if there's been other things in there, you might want to disinfect it with a 10% bleach solution or some pyrethrins. We'll talk about that tomorrow. So just brush it out, close it up. It's ready for the next nesting, and you may have 2 or 3 over the course of the summer. Next slide. So we're going to see again. So how do we do this?
Okay, how to monitor a Bluebird box. It's very important to keep records when you're monitoring boxes. So as you approach, you know which box this is and what am I going to expect to find in this box, because I don't want to scare out any babies that are not ready to fledge yet. So I check, and this box last had eggs in it. So I'm only expecting to see some eggs. So I'm going to approach slowly. I talk and make sure that they know I'm coming. I'll rap very gently on the box, standing to the side in case the lady is in there or one of the adults, because she may come flying out that pole and I don't want a face full of bird, and she doesn't want to fly into my face either. So I'll knock gently. I'll take a look. I have a little inspection mirror that has lights on it because it's a little high for me and I can see how many eggs are there. So here we go. Hello, birdie.
So knock gently on the box. Very gently. It's like at the aquarium. Please don't bang on the cases. Extend my mirror, because see, this box is high. I would not have put that box that high if I were putting it up.
I have 3 eggs.
3 eggs, and we're going to show you what they look like.
And then mark today's date. These are Bluebird eggs, put the number of eggs, and we're ready to go to the next box. Okay,
So this is what we saw in that particular box. You can see how lovely it is to use those boxes. Even on a bright sunny day, it's dark in the box, and those lights really help to count how many eggs there are. And the mirror, so the mirror, it's under $20 to get those. It's called an inspection mirror. Any hardware store would have those for those. Often they're in the plumbing section because people are trying to look behind walls and things. So you approach the box and your birds will get used to you, whatever you're doing. So I usually talk as I'm coming to the box. I whistle a little bit. You don't have to whistle, but just make some noise so they know you're coming. Gently tap the side of the box. Open it up slowly so you don't get surprised by what's in there, because there could be something else in there. And then take a look with your mirror. And it takes a very short amount of time. Even talking through this and doing the demonstration, you can see that did not take very long. So once a week, you're going to do this, maybe twice a week, but not more frequently than that. The birds learn to tolerate this. They usually get used to it, and most often the female will fly out of the box as you approach or as you tap on it. Once in a while, you'll find one that just sits on her eggs, and you can open that box. You can get a picture of her because she does not want to leave her eggs. You just close it back up and say, we'll check again next time. So next slide. So doing this again, if you need to check boxes at a distance, those little, it's a kitty litter box, but it's very convenient for carrying all your tools and stuff. And you could even stand on it if you needed to get up to check your box. So you'll see how quickly this goes. Open the box, do it slowly, look inside. And it can be difficult to tell how many babies there actually are, but if you knew how many eggs there are, you'll know how many babies there were. So this is what we saw in this box, and you can't even see, but there were actually 5 youngsters in this box. You can see 4 of them in the mirror here, and these youngsters are ready to fledge. Normally, we would stop monitoring at this point. We do not want them to fledge prematurely. These are ready to go. So that's one of the things about checking your records is when you get to about 14 days post hatching, and you'll know roughly when that was, you do not open your box on your next visit, because babies that come out prematurely, they're very difficult to catch. They won't stay in the box, and they don't have as a good survival as the ones that fledge at the right time. These are going to be at the right time. But aren't they beautiful? Sometimes you can count the beaks or the heads, and that'll give you a count. This one you can see 4. There were in fact 5 in this box. Next slide. So we happened to be there for fledge day for these little ones. And we have a couple of videos of that. The parents were calling them to come out. They were arriving with morsels of food and just kind of peeking in the box, but not going in and coming out and calling and from the top of the box, let's go out. So let's, next slide. Here they go. Here's the first one.
I see this very often.
This is very cool.
It's kind of like catching them while they hatch.
Right. Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
perfect
I've never
timing.
caught that.
There's an app for that.
Did he come out or did he?
Yeah.
Pretty big though.
Just straight down.
Just gliding. He wasn't going anywhere. He was gliding in the air.
So it gets a little rough, but you're going to see the both parents are going to come back. There they are.
I can kill the birds.
Bird, right.
Yeah.
I'm just flying.
Oh yeah, they're all
on the
like
tree,
freaked
they're
out,
looking
right?
I'm sorry,
No,
can
whatever.
everybody make sure that you're muted, please?
Wingspan 46 to 58 inches.
Christine, could you mute yourself?
Oh.
Everyone can hear you. Thank you.
Okay.
And we have another video of this. Next slide. Oh, this is the one. Nope, same one.
It's the same one?
This very often.
Sorry, there we go.
So that must be the get out of the box thing.
Yep.
Good.
So there's the male, and he's calling and calling. There's Mama Bird.
Like, come on, baby, you can do it.
Can you hear that gentle twitter?
There goes the other one. He can fly pretty good.
He flew pretty well, this one. Hard to catch on a video, but that one was ready to go. Okay,
Yeah.
next slide. So this is what you may see in your box. The eggs and a little tiny baby bird that probably hatched within 24 hours. You kind of call those babies only a mother could love. I mean, they're almost featherless. They have a little bit of dark colored down. Their eyes are not open. I like to say they look like a piece of raw chicken with 2 dark spots of mold on them. And those dark spots are what's going to become the eyes of those babies. But they are really cute. They're very weak. They kind of lay in there, but when the parent shows up, they do manage to lift that head up and beg for food with the mouth wide open. So just a few days old in the center picture, and then an early fledge by himself. The parents are going to continue to feed the fledglings while they learn to fly and how to catch their own food. And eventually the female may go and have another clutch of eggs, and the older siblings will help feed the young ones. So they get a little parenting practice during this time. Next slide. So overview, you need to select an adequate box, which Dana went over yesterday. The overall size is important. The depth is important. It needs ventilation, particularly here in Maryland, because we have pretty warm summers. The diameter of the entrance hole should be 1.5 inches, and that's pretty standard for your Eastern Bluebird. Mountain Bluebirds prefer the 1 9/16 inch diameter holes. You can certainly use those. Those are safe to use here. It's just a little harder if you're building your own to get a 1 9/16 inch drill bit to make that hole. You want to mount your box correctly. Location, 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 just like any real estate. It needs to be near open land. You don't want to have it heavily wooded. You want to mount it on a mounting pole with a predator baffle. Don't put it too high. Doesn't need to be that high. Something that's just above eye level for most people is a good height on the box. You don't want it too low, because then your predator guard is not going to work, because the raccoon can just stand on his hind feet and haul himself up. But it doesn't not need to be too tall. And then you absolutely need to monitor and maintain the box. You've got to check it weekly. You repair it as needed. The worst thing you can do is be a set it and forget it Bluebird landlord. A lot of people, they think that's fun. They get a box, they put it up out on the yard, and that's it. And they see birds going in and out, so they think everything is hunky-dory and this is great. If they're not monitoring, you don't know if those are sparrows. You don't know if one of the birds died. You need to take out one of the babies. There are all kinds of problems that can arise. At the very least, you need to clean that box out. Because, okay, one bird comes in, you put up the box, and they accept new boxes pretty readily, especially if they need nesting sites. So they'll show up. You might have a very successful brood. Maybe they had some mites and that wasn't too bad. And then another bird may come and use that box, so they may come back again. Now they're building a nest on top of another nest, so that they're much closer to the top of the box. It's easier for predators to reach in. If there were any parasites in the box, there are even more now. They may not do very well, and eventually the whole box gets filled up and it's not useful anymore, which is probably a good thing if they're not being monitored. So it's really a responsible thing to do, but it's a lot of fun. If you run into problems, you can always get help from all of us. If you haven't, I assume anybody watching this is probably going to be a responsible Bluebird landlord, but if maybe you notice your neighbors have put up some boxes and they're not doing anything with them, you could suggest, gee, I saw this great program and now I know a little bit about this. Would you mind if I checked your box and see if you can do at least cleaning them out once a year? Because it really is not helpful to be having more house sparrows bred, or just birds that are not successfully raising young because of predator problems or parasite problems. So next slide, I think we're all set. So there are all kinds of education materials. The North American Bluebird Society fact sheets are wonderful. You can download them. You can, I presume you can still order them. You used to be able to order them online, because it's really nice to have them when you're out with your box. One of them actually has pictures of baby birds at every day of the full, I think it was 19 or 20 days in that case. So you know how old they are when you look in there, and you know when to stop looking at them. They have plans for boxes, plans for baffles. Everything you could possibly need is there. Next slide. So Jenny and I are both on the board of the Bluebird Society, as is Lisa, and all you saw today were our pictures. So next slide. And that was Papa Bluebird calling for his young.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bonnie. We do have a couple of questions here. Let's see. I've heard talk of blowflies. Are they a problem in Montgomery County?
We always look for blowflies. Not a lot of the people that I have friends who are monitoring are finding blowflies. I have never had blowflies on any of the boxes that I monitor, but it is something to look for, and they do exist here, so something to watch for.
And a question that we had previously, but I thought it would be a good time to ask this question again. Is there ever a time when you do clean the box out with a bleach solution? And if so, when? And what is the proper bleach preparation?
Okay, there will be times where it's a good idea to use a bleach solution if you've had birds die in the box. That can happen. It can happen. Sometimes it's just natural causes. Birds do die. You may not always know whether or not they have died, why they died. But if you find a dead dead bird in your box, or dead babies, sometimes that will happen. Is we get a period of terrible rain for many days in a row. It's really hard for the parents to supply enough food for their young, and you may find that one or two babies has died. You want to remove those, because the others, I've had this happen. I've had a clutch of 4. There were 4 babies. 2 of them died. I removed those 2 that died, and then the other 2 survived and fledged. And that's a time when you would use some bleach in the box. Also, if you've had a mite infestation, bleach or some pyrethrin, which I'll show you a picture of tomorrow, to disinfect the box. So you just mix a 90% water, 10% bleach solution, spray down the inside of the box, probably give it a little scrub, let it air dry before you close it up again, so that the birds aren't tempted to go in there and get even a dilute bleach solution on them. But that is a good idea. And some people will do it more often. It's not strictly necessary. You might want to do it early or at the end of the season, just to have a good clean box to get started. Okay, next question.
So Patricia would like to know if the bluebirds will eat the cicadas.
I'm sure they will. I haven't seen it yet. When we first got the brown marmorated stink bugs here, none of the birds were eating them, but the bluebirds certainly learned to eat them. And there was somebody who actually set up a sheet in front on the arrival to his nest box, a strobe light and a fancy camera, and got a picture of a bluebird flying into the next box, proudly bringing in a stink bug. So I'm going to assume that they will probably go after those cicadas too. Almost everything out there will eat cicadas, because it's just such a wonderful nutritional source for them.
We'll see some fat birds flying around.
You should see some very fat birds, some fat possums, raccoons, flying squirrels. Everything's going to eat them.
Don't let your dogs eat them.
Please don't. Actually, they're not toxic for your dog. 1 or 2 is not going to be a problem. But if you're in veterinary medicine, this time of year, dogs will eat a lot. And there's a lot of undigestible parts on a cicada. The husk, they have an exoskeleton in the wings. You do not want your dog having overeaten on cicadas, coming in and vomiting cicada parts onto your carpet. This could be bad. So try and limit what your dog's eating for cicadas.
Absolutely. All right. Another question is, why aren't sparrow halos used to keep the house sparrows out? She finds that halos are 100% effective on her bird feeder.
I don't know. There has been, NABS has done a lot of research for sparrows. They recommend something called a sparrow spooker. And I don't know why those are not used. You would think it would be a good solution. Possibly the bluebirds don't like them, and they will accept a sparrow spooker. And I have some suggestions for bluebirds tomorrow. You can string fishing line on the top of the box, and then once bluebirds have moved in, you can put a sparrow spooker, which just has strips, usually of mylar, that brush the top of the box, that will keep sparrows out. But I don't know. I haven't seen that as a solution, and I'm assuming that someone has probably tried it. I don't get sparrows anywhere near my boxes, so I can't say I had tried it.
All right. I think that is the last of the questions. Adeline also said that she did take a photo of a bluebird with the cicada last week, so she can confirm that when you eat them.
Please email that to the Bluebird Society so we can maybe share that with everyone if you don't mind.
Oh, we've got another question here, I think. It says, I put up a bluebird box and a male immediately started building a nest. Within 2 hours, the sparrow killed the male in the box. She took the box down and the bluebirds kept looking for the box. She hasn't seen any sparrows for weeks, but she did buy a trap. Can she put that box up again?
Yes, if you're willing to trap and remove the sparrow or use some of the methods to deter sparrows from getting near the box, you can certainly give it a try. When I first put up my box, I had a similar instance. I had both adults killed by a gang of starlings. I had a gangland murder in my backyard. The starlings could not get in the box. It was a correct box, but they attacked, and the parents had young. They defended that box to the death. So I called. At that time, the North American Bluebird Society was right here in Silver Spring, and I called and they said, don't get discouraged, don't get discouraged. That has never happened again, because suddenly the starlings realized, well, we can't get in there anyway. That's not true with the sparrows, so it's going to take a lot more vigilance for you, either trapping the sparrow, trying the fishing line on top of the box so that they don't land on it. They really like to land on the box, and that I have a niece in New Hampshire who has tried this and it has worked. And then once you get the bluebirds in there, put up a sparrow spooker on it and see how it goes. And the thing to tell yourself is those bluebirds are looking for nesting sites, and you can try and provide them with a sparrow-free nesting site, but they're there, they're in your area, and they may try to find a natural cavity, but so will the sparrows, and no one's going to discourage the sparrows. So I might go ahead and try again and see if you can do that. If it's a recurring problem and you have nothing but sparrows, probably you don't want one. Maybe you can go with a finch box, which just has a hole small enough that sparrows can't get in, and you might get that. But it's worth a try because the bluebirds are facing that competition, whether you have a box up or not. So if you can try and do a safe box, I would personally give it a try. And I never had a problem again. I don't get a lot of sparrows, but the starlings have never been back.